Module 13, Project Stakeholder Management Module Overview. Project stakeholder management includes the processes required to identify the people, groups or organisations that could impact or be impacted by the project, to analyse stakeholder expectations and their impact on the project, and to develop appropriate management strategies for effectively engaging stakeholders in project decisions and execution. The processes support the work of the project team to analyse stakeholder expectations, assess the degree to which they impact or are impacted by the project, and develop strategies to effectively engage stakeholders in supply of project decisions and planning the execution of the work of the project. And that's a PMBOK guide, page 503. So what are we going to cover in this module? 13.0 Project Stakeholder Management Module Overview, which is this video. 13.1 Identify Stakeholders, the process of identifying project stakeholders regularly and analysing and documenting relevant information regarding their interests, involvement, interdependencies, influence and potential impact on the project's success. 13.2 Plan Stakeholder Engagement, the process of developing approaches to involve project stakeholders based on their needs, expectations, interests and potential impact on the project. 13.3 Manage Stakeholder Engagement, the process of communicating and working with stakeholders to meet their needs and expectations, address issues and foster appropriate stakeholder engagement involvement. 13.4 Monitor Stakeholder Engagement, the process of monitoring project stakeholder relationships and tailoring strategies for engaging stakeholders through the modification of engagement strategies and plans. Key concepts for project stakeholder management. When I first started in project management, I thought that stakeholders were my manager and the customer. But cast your mind back to the Integration Management Module Overview lesson, where I said that the project manager manages the project integration management area, but specialists manage the other knowledge areas. For example, a financial controller may manage the project cost management knowledge area. However, the project manager retains overall responsibility for the entire project. Well, guess who those specialists are? They are the stakeholders, and there are many other stakeholders too. What's a stakeholder? According to the PMBOK guide, a stakeholder is an individual, group or organisation that may affect or be affected or perceive itself to be affected by a decision, activity or outcome of a project, programme or portfolio. Every project has stakeholders who are impacted by or can impact the project in a positive or negative way. It comes as a surprise to some new project managers that a stakeholder might actually want to harm your project, but some can and some do. There are many reasons, e.g. you get to manage a project that another project manager really wanted to manage. A stakeholder may feel a project is unethical, or another project manager is hoping your project will fail so they can get your key specialists and resources to work on their project. And it could be many other as well. But just be aware of the possibility. On one project I was managing many years ago, the project was going well, but a senior manager called me into his office and told me the CEO was going to close the project because it had been failing, and there was a distinct possibility I was going to be fired as well. And this came as a real shock, but I worked back late that night collecting and organising the project reports. You might remember on a previous video I said that in court the cases are won or lost on documentation. Well, in projects it's much the same. Well, next day I was called into a meeting of the project control board headed by the CEO, and there were many angry faces in the room and a very chilly atmosphere. I survived the meeting and managed the project to a successful completion. To cut a long story short, it transpired that another manager had mental health issues and he had been telling the CEO that the project was going bad and I had been diverting funds and resources from the project for his project to prop up my project, and he had even produced fake reports to support his claims. You need to be careful of the level of authority a person has, because a person with a negative opinion of the project and a lot of authority can do serious damage and needs to be managed very carefully. Whereas a person with a negative opinion of the project with little real authority usually needs little management as well. But we need to look beyond this so-called legitimate power that comes from having a certain role in an organisation. Sometimes you will find a person in an organisation who has friends in senior management, and this type of stakeholder can influence a project almost as much as managers can. The PMBOK Guide says academic research and analysis of high-profile project disasters highlight the importance of a structured approach to identification, prioritization and engagement of all stakeholders. The ability of the project manager and team to correctly identify and engage all stakeholders is an appropriate way that can mean the difference between project success and failure. To increase the chances of success, the process of stakeholder identification and engagement should commence as soon as possible after the project charter has been approved. The project manager has been assigned and the team begins to form. Stakeholder satisfaction should be identified and managed as a project objective. The key to effective stakeholder engagement is a focus on continuous communications with the stakeholders, including team members, to understand their needs and expectations, address issues as they occur, manage conflicting interests, and foster appropriate stakeholder engagement in project decisions and activities. The identification and prioritization of stakeholders and engagement with them should be reviewed and updated routinely and at least at the following times: when the project moves through different phases of its life cycle, the current stakeholders are no longer involved in the work of the project, or new stakeholders become members of the project stakeholder community, or there are significant changes in the organisation or the wider stakeholder community. So let's have a look at trends and emerging practices in project stakeholder engagement. These include identifying all stakeholders, not just a limited set, ensuring that all team members are involved in stakeholder engagement activities, reviewing the stakeholder community regularly, often in parallel with reviews of individual project risks, consulting with stakeholders who are most affected by the work or outcomes of the project through the concept of co-creation. Co-creation places greater emphasis on including affected stakeholders as on the team as partners, and capturing the value of effective stakeholder engagement, both positive and negative. Positive values can be based on the consideration of benefits derived from higher levels of active support from stakeholders, particularly the powerful stakeholders, of course. Negative value can be derived by measuring the true costs of not engaging stakeholders effectively, leading to product recalls or loss of organisational or project reputation. And that's from PMBOK Guide, page 505. And it also reminds me of the cost of quality. What happens to your project and the cost of rework and things like that if you don't have a quality system. Considerations for adaptive or agile environments. Projects experiencing a high degree of change require active engagement and participation with project stakeholders. PMI recommends that, as well as being frequent, communications on agile projects need to be direct rather than having to be relayed through layers of bureaucracy. This means that managers will have to make themselves more available than they would on a traditional waterfall style project. And sometimes getting involved in projects and you go in and everyone wants let's go agile, and then you explain to the managers, well, you're going to have to be involved more. No, we want agile, but we don't want to be involved. We want it to be like the old style. Sorry, you have to make a choice. Regular interactions with the stakeholder community throughout the project mitigate risk, build trust and support adjustments earlier in the project cycle, thus reducing costs and increasing the likelihood of success in the project. You can read more about considerations for agile adaptive environments on page 506 of the PMBOK guide. However, you will find, this is for your own interest and your own professional practice, you will find that there'll be very little on the agile adaptive environments appearing in the examination. That brings us to the end of Managed Stakeholder Management module overview. The next lesson is 13.1, Identify Stakeholders. And please read the corresponding chapter in the PMBOK guide before watching the video. Oh, but wait just a moment. Almost every other knowledge area starts with a chapter to plan the management of the area. This one doesn't. There is only one other knowledge area that doesn't begin with a planning session for the area, and that's project integration management. You may recall it begins with develop project charter. Please remember this for the exam because they like to test you on the exceptions.